You may be thinking to yourself, how in the world do you queer agriculture? Isn't agriculture like this? It's just agriculture and it involves farms and animals and stuff. So how do you queer that? I have questions. Actually, I probably don't want to have answers to those questions, but I still have questions. Hey everyone, welcome to Come and Take It. So last week, I showed you guys just how bad the leftist radical ideology has gotten in the state of Texas. Yes, in the month of June, but not just in the month of June. It's also, July, August, September, October. I could go through all the months, but I won't.
It just keeps coming and coming and coming. There's never a let-up. It's relentless. Every day it piles up more and more and more, and you got to get it out. And the more you get out, the more it keeps coming in.
Point is, it's all the time. And so if you missed that episode, go back and watch it. You can find it on my YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. By the way, if you're not already subscribed to my YouTube channel or wherever you get your audio podcasts, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whichever one of those fits your fancy. So go back and watch that episode. You'll probably vomit in your mouth.
And then he ran into my life. He ran into my life 10 times.
But you're going to learn a lot, I promise. So I decided to, since I showed you guys just how bad the rot has gotten, I wanted to kind of turn this into a little bit of a series this month. So part one was last week, and it was basically how the left has co-opted the state of Texas. And now part two today is how Texas is fighting back against the radical sexual ideology. So I'm going to give you three different headlines, all unrelated, all good news, all in the past week. Okay, so number one, Texas Tech pledges greater oversight following drag queen seminar. So here's what happened at Texas Tech over in Lubbock. Earlier this month, a Cornell lecturer dressed as a drag queen hosted a seminar on, get this, queering agriculture for Texas Tech students.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
You may be thinking to yourself, how in the world do you queer agriculture? Isn't agriculture like this? It's just agriculture and it involves farms and animals and stuff. So how do you queer that? I have questions. Actually, I probably don't want to have answers to those questions, but I still have questions. So anyway, this seminar was on queering agriculture. And here's the cunning part. He told the attendees to sneak queer examples and books into early education and encourage the use of opposite sex restrooms. So it's not really about queering the agriculture, it's about queering the kids. You know how they keep saying, this isn't a trend. It's just a coincidence that there's just been a giant uptick of this stuff in young children since we started teaching it to them. It's not a trend. What are you talking about? This is just children being their true selves. Well, I don't think you'd have to sneak this into literally every aspect of their lives if this was just who they were. Like if this is who they are, you don't have to sneak it in. You don't have to push it on them. They would just be their true selves. You wouldn't have to push them into it. So it's not queering agriculture. It's just queering everyone. All right. But they held this seminar at the school. This is what they told Texas Scorecard in a statement. This seminar was organized and conducted by a Texas Tech University student committee as part of a grant component requiring the promotion of diversity and a culture of inclusion. The university believes the manner in which this event was conducted lacked transparency and is inconsistent with our commitment to complying with not only the letter, but also the spirit of SB 17. The university will better utilize advisors who can provide guidance regarding holding events on campus in the future. Now, recognize, I think that it really needs to be said, they are admitting they are committed to complying with not only the letter of the law banning DEI initiatives on campus, but the spirit in which it is intended. That's huge because that's the university going out of their way to say, we're not looking for a fight. We're not looking to challenge you on this. We're not looking for a loophole. We understand what you mean. with no diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and we agree and want to follow that. That's what the university is, if you want to read between the lines, that's really what the university is saying here. They could have said, well, technically, and they didn't. They said, look, we want to do what you guys want us to do. Essentially, this is me saying this, not Texas Tech. Essentially, we kind of agree with you. We hear you, and we're not going to do it anymore. So the little communists over there at Texas Tech, and you know it's bad when they sneak into like Lubbock, Texas, and over at A&M. I grew up as a Texas fan. I had Texas Longhorn season tickets, so it pains me to talk about A&M, but
Come on, now you're openly cheering for the other team? Put my boys back in.
You would think in a place like A&M, it's rural, it's, a place where you wouldn't expect the rot that you see in Austin, Texas. But these little communists get into these schools over at Texas Tech and Texas A&M and all of these places across Texas, these public universities, and they just get in there and they want to bring all their Marxism to these campuses. Well, they overplayed their hand over at Texas Tech. So that's your first small victory over the last week. All right, number 2. AG Paxton secures injunction halting Biden administration's Title IX rewrite. This was huge, guys. Okay, Title IX, for those of you who don't know, so Title IX was originally written in 1972, and it was put in place by the Department of Education to prevent women from sex-based discrimination, basically. So I won't read you word for word verbatim, but it was just like, hey, you cannot discriminate based on, sex in, sports or education or, any of those issues. And I would say in 1972, I understand the reason behind it. However, what the Biden administration did recently was that they rewrote, this was like 1,500 pages of a rewrite of Title IX, and they added gender identity as a protected class. So they added gender identity to count as the definition of sex and gender identity. So this would essentially force schools K through 12 to allow boys in girls' locker rooms, in girls' bathrooms, in girls' sports, in girls' spaces, in all of girls' everything, boys would now be allowed to go. Schools that refused, this is what the Biden administration rewrote it, schools that refuse would be threatened with, loss of federal education funds. Now look, this is essentially codifying males and female spaces across the country. That's insane. Also insane that there even is a Department of Education. Like the federal government has absolutely no business involved in state education. They have absolutely no business using federal funds as a weapon. It's like a little carrot that they're dangling in front of your face. Oh, you can get these funds, but only if you agree with our radical ideology. I mean, it's the entire department should be abolished. First of all, this should not even be a thing that we have to worry about. But we do not allow that here in the state of Texas. And so our great Attorney General, Ken Paxton, sued the Biden administration, and actually he got a permanent injunction against the enforcement of the new rewritten Title IX against Texas and its schools. So not that madness here. Nope, not in Texas. I want to read some of the court order. This district judge, U.S. District Judge Reed O'Connor, said rather than promote the equal opportunity, dignity, and respect that Title IX demands for both biological sexes, the Department of Education's guidance documents do the opposite in an effort to advance an agenda wholly divorced from the text, structure, and contemporary context of Title IX. Not to mention, recipients of Title IX funding, including Texas schools, will face an impossible choice: revise policies in compliance with the guidance documents but in contravention of state law, or face the loss of substantial funding. Thus, to allow the Biden administration's unlawful action to stand would be functionally rewrite Title IX in a way that shockingly transforms American education and usurps a major question from Congress. This is not how our democratic system functions. Boom. I don't even know how I could even add anything to it to say it better. I mean, to think that you should is completely counterintuitive to the entire reason that Title IX was written, right? Title IX was written to protect women. What the Biden administration is doing is the exact opposite. It is exactly what Title IX was written for. And they don't, I mean, sometimes I'm like, do they understand it? Do they not understand it? Because there's probably a good chunk of them that really are not bright. And then there is another chunk of them who know exactly what they're doing because this is all part of the game plan. This is all part of it, the master plan. But regardless, win number 2, slam dunk, we will take it. Thank you, Attorney General Ken Paxton, here in the state of Texas. And that is one more way Texas is saying, nope, not here. You can take that radical ideology to California. You can take that radical ideology to New York. You can take it, I don't know, anywhere other than Texas, I guess. But we're going to worry about ourselves and we're going to take care of us. And luckily, we have an attorney general who has said, you are not turning our state into a communist hellhole. No, thank you. I'm going to give you one more way that Texas is pushing back here. And this is, once again, our great Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Here's the headline. Texas sues Biden administration over rule forcing doctors to perform gender mutilation procedures. So, again, Ken Paxton, all he does is win. He filed a lawsuit with the state of Montana against the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the secretary of HHS, Javier Becerra, and some others in the Biden administration over this new rule that was adopted by HHS. Are you noticing a pattern yet? The Biden administration, instead of allowing Congress to dictate these things, the Biden administration very quietly just changes policies, just revises policies to make all of them more radical, to make our country a more radical communist dystopia, really. That's how they do. They just quietly do this. So here's what you just heard the new rule, the new rewrite from Title IX. Well, here's a new rule adopted by HHS that aims to force states to pay for gender mutilation surgeries through Medicaid programs and would require doctors to carry out gender surgeries regardless of any state law against the practice. So the Attorney General's office stated in a press release about this rule, they said, under the new rule, any medical institution that refuses to perform the procedures can be stripped of all federal healthcare funds, including federal Medicaid and Medicare dollars. This rule further claims to preempt any state laws forbidding such procedures. So, first of all, I mean, you have to realize how ridiculous this rule is. Why should a state have to pay for let's use their term, okay? Gender affirming care.
I need a shower.
That's the only time I'm going to use it. All right. Let's pretend for a second it's plastic surgery. Okay. So can women now go to Medicaid or Medicare when they're like, hey, I identify as a woman with bigger breasts. Can I get a breast implants on the taxpayer dime? Can I do that now? Obviously, no. So it's just preposterous to think that someone could just say, well, I identify as someone who has these body parts, or as it were, not these body parts. And now the taxpayer is on the hook for their procedures. I mean, where do you draw the line? It's ridiculous on its face. So anyway, obviously the inherent problem is that last session, the state banned those procedures for minors, at least. And so you see just how important it is to have state officials willing to fight back, willing to go on offense against a corrupt federal regime that is obviously abusing its power, that is obviously engaging in federal overreach to an extent I'm not sure that we've seen. I'm not a historian, so I would love to hear you guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, I would love to have you guys comment. At least in my studies, I can't think of a federal government who has just been so blatant about overreach. I mean, you see them doing it all across the board, specifically after Joe Biden was put into office. I almost said something that might have gotten me banned. Was elected into office in the safest and most secure election of all time. I mean, they've done things like completely ignored the Supreme Court's decisions. They've put, the moratorium on rent. That was unconstitutional. They're blatantly saying, we know that this is unconstitutional, but we're going to do it anyway with the student loan debt and all sorts of things that they are just specifically saying, we don't care that we're abusing their power. Who's going to stop us? Well, I'll tell you who's going to stop you. Ken freaking Paxton, that's who. So even though we had some members of the Texas legislature, a lot of whom are no longer going to be in the Texas legislature, mostly because of their very decision to impeach our great attorney general. Even though they did that to him, all he's done since then has been to fight for us, to fight for the state of Texas, to fight back against these communists who want to just mold us into their big communist dystopia. So, look, there's still a lot of work to be done, obviously, here in the state of Texas. I talk about it all the time, but we have a fighter fighting, and that's a good one. It's a good thing to have. We also have, some sanity at our public education institutions, our higher education institutions. That's good news. It's just time. We've got to build on that. We've got to keep building on that. And we've got to remember the significance and the importance of having these people in power who can fight those fights for us. Because when it's necessary, when we need it, we need someone who's not going to be worried about the mean things the leftist mainstream media is going to call them. Oh no, they might call me a word ending in phobic. Who cares? We've got a state to save. And you know what? The last week, especially in the month of June, was a good week. We're going to take these victories, all right? We're going to build upon them. And I hope that you will join me next time on Come and Take It. We'll see you then.